Arsenal fans, we got a lot to talk about. I did not want to be here. I am not happy that I am here. I'm not happy about the circumstances that have brought us here. I did not do a game review after the last game, which is the first Premier League game that I haven't done that for, because I was very upset yesterday. And if I had made a video yesterday, you probably just would have heard me cursing off Xhaka and being mad about the game and, a lot of things that are not very productive. But that's not what I want to do with this channel. So I've taken some time to relax, to take in all the information, to really think about things from an Arsenal perspective. And I hope that I can share some of my insights with you in this video. So if you're an Arsenal fan, if you're looking for answers, if you're racking your brain thinking, how do we get here and where do we go? Hopefully this video can help with some of that. I'm gonna go into all three levels, the players, the manager, and the board, and really examine what is wrong, what are the real problems at Arsenal, and how we can fix them. If you're looking for a game review, there's not gonna be one. I'm not gonna talk about this Burnley match. If you wanna see an Arsenal game review, go watch my women's review from yesterday. That game was actually interesting. It actually featured two good teams and two teams that are fighting for a title. So you can watch that instead. But without further ado, roll that intro.
Oh yeah. I'm not the type of brother to play with. See a lot of people acting like all ball players sounding like haters. We the young kings of this generation,
What's up, y'all? Welcome back. Pitch side with Parker here, as I said before, under some unfortunate circumstances that find Arsenal 15th in the Premier League table. They've lost a relegation 6-pointer at home to Burnley. Their first loss at home to Burnley in the Premier League era, first since the 70s. First it was Leicester beating Arsenal in the Premier League for the first time in the however many years. Aston Villa did the same. Wolves did the same. The stats that are going around this team are crazy. I mean, Aubameyang has scored as many goals for Burnley from open play this season as he has for Arsenal. Patrick Bamford has more goals than Lacazette and Aubameyang combined in the Premier League. 2020 is outrageous. You can't even chalk it up to 2020 because some of these things have been a long time coming for Arsenal. So that's the type of thing I'm going to get into in this video. It might be a little bit of a longer one, but I hope that you can gain some insight, maybe think about it in a different way. At least that would be my goal coming away from this video, because spoiler alert, the problems are really easy to pick out. The answers are a little bit on the harder side. I'm just trying to avoid becoming the next Leeds United. I don't want to become Sunderland. I don't want to become Wigan. None of these great teams who have fallen from grace. Because unfortunately right now, that's what Arsenal look like. I mean, it's not looking great for Arsenal, who are already in 15th place. And even if you look at the teams below Arsenal right now, how many of them are we really convinced that Arsenal is better than? I do think they're at least better than Sheffield, but that would still put us firmly in the relegation zone. So I'm not feeling great right now. Anyway, we need to jump into it. So I'm going to do that. And we're going to start of the three levels of players, manager, and the board. We're going to do them in that order, and we'll start with the players. This is a squad that at the beginning of the season, I said in my previews, I think it's a top 6 quality squad. I predicted Arsenal to be 4th because I expected some luck to go their way. I liked at the time what Arteta was doing, and I had probably way too much faith. But the squad has a lot of decent players. I really think that it's a lot of players who across the board are underperforming for one reason or another. I think one of the biggest issues with Arsenal's squad is that there are very few players who actually stand out above one another. We have a lot of players who are of a very, very similar level, and that makes things hard for Arteta. It makes it hard to pick a consistent first 11, and it makes rotation hard as well, because who really deserves to be playing in the Europa League? I mean, those guys are playing well. They're doing it against worse teams. Do they deserve a shot in the Premier League? Are they better than the guys who are starting in the Premier League? On the evidence we see in the games, you would think so, but really all these players are so similar in their level. If you go through position by position at Arsenal, I think there's only 2 or maybe 3 positions where you can say definitively who the best player is at that position. The best goalkeeper is obviously Leno. I think the best left back is Kieran Tierney. Probably the best center back is Gabriel. Outside of that, I don't know. I mean, right back, center mid, attacking mid, even striker. Yes, you'd be tempted to say Aubameyang, but when he's played through the middle this season, he hasn't been the best player on the field. And Nketiah is the leading goal scorer. And is Aubameyang the best left winger, maybe? I mean, we really don't know because the positions get shifted around so much. If you were to ask me who is really truly Arsenal quality, who can move this team forward in the right direction in terms of players that are currently on the roster, not a lot of names stand out. I mean, for me, definitely Gabriel, Tierney, Saka, Thomas Partey, I guess Leno, probably Aubameyang, although he hasn't showed it recently. I mean, that's about as far as the list goes. And then, maybe depending on your opinions of certain players or certain young players especially, you might add a couple more. But that's a pretty small list for how enormous the Arsenal squad is. And the other thing we have to wonder about these players is, have they given up on Mikel Arteta at this point? Because I think the lack of discipline is something that a lot of people are looking at with Arsenal right now, and you can chalk it up to Arteta, but ultimately the players are still acting out. Pepe got his red card. Luis has had a couple of red card incidents under Arteta. Obviously, Xhaka's thing on Sunday, which was just a complete head-gone moment. It feels like they're almost self-sabotaging at this point. And it happened towards the end under Emery. It happened in the end under Wenger as well. There are some same players in all of these squads. The Bellerins, the Mustafis, the Xhakas. I mean, you could argue Ozil, because even though he hasn't been even around the team at all, he still does go to training every day, and he clearly still has an impact on this group of players off the field, and I don't know how much that is influencing what's happening on the field. These players have really killed off multiple managers already, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do it again with Arteta. That's kind of how it's looking to me at this point, is that to an extent they're letting him down. I mean, as much as Arsenal wasn't fantastic against Burnley, they created enough chances to win the game. And the period that they were ahead the most in the game was right when Xhaka got sent off. That 10 minutes before, it really looked like Arsenal were going to go win it, and that would have changed everything. You could say the same thing against Leeds, where Arsenal had at least created some chances. It was an open game, but Pepe ruined it with the red card. So there is a sense to me that these players are kind of undermining Arteta, and I do think that one of the main things that needs to change at Arsenal, and I'll get to this when I reach my conclusions at the end of the video, is that a lot of these players are going to have to be moved on, and that they are a huge problem with the squad, as I've said a couple times before. But Arteta is certainly not faultless, and let's start talking about him. So there's a lot of calls right now for Arteta out, for him to get sacked, and I understand it. I mean, the results are dreadful. Arsenal is very low in the table, but I am still in a stage where I don't think that's the move right now. I'm not going to say I'm fully backing Arteta, because there are more than enough questions to make me uncertain about him for the future, but right now I don't necessarily think that's the right move. Before we get to the criticisms, let's talk about what he's done well as Arsenal manager. Obviously, the FA Cup run was huge. I don't think that we should forget about that just because Arsenal is in a bad run of form right now. It wasn't a complete luck. Clearly, Arteta engineered this 3 at the back system, this style of football for that run specifically, coming out of Project Restart. He was able to get results, and he did it against really good teams. There was a flying Sheffield team that we beat away from home. Did it against Manchester City in the semifinal, and did it against Chelsea in the final. Those wins, you just can't take away from Arteta, in my opinion, and it showed that he does have an ability to get there. When the players are on his side and everybody is kind of on the same page, he's got something to him as a manager. Also, obviously, I think the big thing that you can point to in his tenure has been the defense under Mikel Arteta. It's looked a lot more sturdy. Arsenal stopped leaking goals like they did before. And this is a place where I get a little annoyed with Arsenal fans, because I feel like there was a large number of people who for years were shouting about, oh, we don't play well enough defensively, we're so bad, we're so open, we're so vulnerable. And then as soon as he makes changes to fix that, they turn on him for not having enough offense. I think a good top coach could do both, but it would be very hard with this group of players. And so you see that he's clearly worked more on that defensive side of the game, but I would still say that's something he's done well. However, that's pretty much where the list ends, and there's a lot that Arteta has done wrong. The first thing I would point to is his man management. There are so many cases in this Arsenal squad of mismanagement from Arteta. I think the big three for me are Ozil, Guendouzi, and William Saliba. The Ozil situation I've covered in multiple videos before, but suffice to say that when your team is bottom of the league in creating chances, and you've got Ozil getting paid $350,000 and literally cannot be selected to play in a game, that's obviously a huge issue. I won't say anything more on that. And then the other big one with Saliba, I mean, this is a tough one because we don't know all the details. And one thing we do know is that there's been a lot of loss in Saliba's personal life recently. So I think that's an important factor that you can't take out of the equation. However, again, it's a situation where there are players who are underperforming in the Premier League squads and in the Europa League squads, especially at center back, and Saliba is not being given as an option. And then for them to not use him, but then also not loan him feels like a step backwards because this is a player with immense talent. You see his center back partner from Saint Etienne, Fofana, who has been thriving at Leicester and playing very well in the Premier League. And you think to yourself, well, Saliba was supposed to be better than him. So if he can succeed at the Premier League level, why can't Saliba? And even if you throw him in and he makes some mistakes, at least he could learn from that. He is meant to be the future of Arsenal's back line along with Gabriel. So let's let them form that partnership. Let's give them some opportunities. And even if it doesn't look perfect, I mean, Arsenal are 15th in the table. What else do you have to lose at this point? But again, there may be things going on behind the scenes that we don't know. There almost certainly are with all of these cases, but there's just been a lot of mishandling from Arteta. And then you look at the differences in punishment when you look at the Guendouzi situation. What's he going to do with Xhaka? Because what Xhaka did is essentially the same thing that Guendouzi got sent to Germany for, but Xhaka actually did it in the middle of the game and got a red card and cost the team the game. So will he be handled that way? You know, Pepe's punishment was very harsh when he got the red card. Arteta really singled him out in the media. He hasn't done that for Xhaka. And then even the case of somebody like a Maitland-Niles. He was ready to go to Wolves. The pen was nearly on the paper. He was ready to start thriving, to move to a new environment. And then Arteta said, no, we need you. You were great in the FA Cup. You're on the verge of the England team. Stay with us. This is the right move for you. We want you. And then he hasn't played any games in like the past 2 months for Arsenal. He's actually played more games for England than for Arsenal in the past 2 months. How can you get into the English national team and not play for... Some of it is really pretty mind-blowing. So there's good and there's bad with Arteta. He's obviously a very young manager, and it is important to balance the circumstances. If you take a step back, if you remove some of your ire from the Burnley game, if you really think about things on a big picture perspective, this is Arteta's first job. He hasn't even been at Arsenal a year yet. I mean, we're still a week or two away from his 1-year anniversary of when he got appointed. In that time, he's also had to deal with COVID and the whole lockdown earlier this year. I mean, he had COVID. He was like the first person in the Premier League to get COVID. You know, he's had to deal with that. He's had to learn a whole new group of players and employ a set of tactics with them essentially virtually. Like, that's a very hard thing to have to come in and do within 6 months of being appointed as a manager. And yet he still won that FA Cup trophy and he still had some success. And I think the other thing that nobody really talks about with Mikel Arteta is the amount of turnover around him. You know, when he came in, Raul Sanllehi was still there, kind of doing everything at the front office level. And there was that trident with him and Edu and Vinay. And now there's been these massive cuts, these massive changes, and it's essentially Arteta and Edu doing all of the player scouting, all of the transfer market business. Raul Sanllehi is gone, and he was a huge influence. Everything pretty much ran through him. You had a signing like Willian, who was completely cooperated by his agent, Kia Jarabchian, who was friends with Sanllehi. I mean, that's how business was getting done when Arteta first came in. And now Arteta, in addition to having a struggling squad and figuring out what to do in what game and all these other things, he also has to run the transfer market with Edu. I mean, he's got a lot of responsibilities for somebody in his first job. And it has changed time and time again. Literally, the person who is his boss has changed multiple times since he's been in charge. So to me, I am a little concerned with throwing him under the bus or giving up on him too early. because he hasn't even gotten his feet on the ground yet. There's no consistent plan from above, and that has been part of the reason I think he has failed to create a consistent plan with what he wants to do with this team. And if you want to say that those are excuses and you still want Arteta out, fair play to you, but I just don't know who would be a better manager right now. Who is really going to come in and do a better job than Mikel Arteta? Because the more experienced and the bigger names who've been touted for this job, you know, the Allegris, potentially a Pochettino, although I don't really think that would happen. These guys need money to thrive. I don't think any of them want to come to Arsenal, be uncertain about their transfer budget, come into a complete mess of a situation with pretty average team of players. It's not really going to work out for them. And then you're going to have to go through this whole cycle again of learning the new manager and figuring out which players you want to keep and which players you don't. I mean, we've barely gotten past that first part of the cycle with Arteta. And if you're going to give up on him already, there's no way that can move the club forward faster. And I think that's what everybody ultimately wants. And I still think it can happen under Mikel Arteta, man. It hasn't even been a year. I think we need to give it some time and really take ourselves out of this exact moment right now, which, yes, is very ugly, but it's not the end of the world. So finally, the third level that you can get to is the board. And we all know that this is a huge problem at Arsenal. It has been a problem for a long time at Arsenal. Ever since Stan Kroenke bought the club, I think it was around 2005, 2006. That has been essentially the peak down to the decline of Arsenal to where we are now. There's really just no denying that. It's happened under multiple managers, different eras, everything. It's all been very bad. And primarily because he's an owner who doesn't care. He's an American who owns multiple other sports teams, all of whom he cares about more. And his primary goal above all of that, like most owners, is making money. And Arsenal's a cash cow. I mean, look at the retro Adidas thing they put out last week. Like, they are cashing out. I'm guilty myself. I've bought plenty of Arsenal gear over the past year or so. I remember around this time last year getting a Black Friday deal on a jersey because I was so excited that Emery had been sacked that I felt okay to spend money at the club again. And look where we are now. But either way, that cash cow keeps churning. And that's all he really cares about Arsenal for. The Kroenke family has already discussed how they want to use Arsenal as like a family heirloom and they're never going to give it up or sell it to anybody else. So there's a lot of problems there, but it's not going to change. And you got to get that through your head. I mean, we've seen multiple petitions before from Arsenal fans. It's gotten nowhere. The heads who tend to roll are the other people in the front office or the managers. And other than that, these guys are going to be there. And unfortunately, there's just not a lot we can do about it. But can you win with the current Arsenal setup? Can you win with the board the way that it is right now? I don't know if you can ever quite reach the heights of, the Chelseas and the Cities, obviously, because they have so much money that is just pumped in extra from the owners. But I do think that you could still form something the way that Liverpool has. The biggest difference there is that Arsenal has actually spent about the same amount of money as Liverpool during their whole rebuild. The issue is that Arsenal doesn't make any money in the transfer market. And I don't know if they need to hire a new director of football. I don't know if Edu can accomplish this. It's been something that has happened for a long, long time. If you look at all the great players that Arsenal's had along the lines, Arsenal has never gotten good returns for them in the transfer market. Thierry Henry, Robin Van Persie, Alexis Sanchez, Aaron Ramsey as of recently. We see what's going to happen with Ozil. He'll leave on a free next summer. The legends of Arsenal Football Club did not demand anything in the transfer market. They didn't make anything back from them. One of my favorite factoids about Arsenal, their record transfer sale is Mark Overmars. And that was in 2001 for about $44 million US. That is chump change these days. I mean, Chelsea paid double that for Kepa. Iwobi and Theo Walcott are in top 5 Arsenal sales of all time. And fair play, those were good business. I don't know really what Everton was thinking there. But Arsenal has really failed to capitalize. And I think especially in this turning point with the squad, they need to be able to get some money for the current players. If there is going to be a rebuild around different players and the same manager, you got to get money for some of these old players that you need to get out. And you have to get some money for the young players as well, because they will command a lot of value. So The board is certainly an issue, and I don't think that that's going anywhere anytime soon, but Arsenal can be a lot better under the current setup, and in my opinion, even with Arteta, but there just need to be different moves made, and you need to be more ruthless in terms of figuring out who you want to keep, who you don't, and if you don't want to keep them, get something for them so that you can reinvest. I mean, if Arsenal had sold Bellerin this summer for $25 million to PSG like it was suggested, if Arteta had actually let Maitland-Niles go to Wolves for $20 million, that's $45 million right there, and that's like 3/4 of what you needed to buy Houssem Aouar, who would have made a huge impact on this team. It's really simple business, it's simple math, and for some reason Arsenal from the top has never quite understood that. So where are we left? I've talked probably way too much about all of this, and if you're still here, that's remarkable. But thank you. My verdict is essentially that the board is really never going to change, and we have to accept that. I do think that Arteta has done a very poor job recently, but I still think that because of how new he is and how much has changed around him, I don't quite feel that he's been given a fair shot just yet. And I also feel that any other manager that you bring in is not really going to help the club move forward or give Arsenal a better chance of moving forward than Arteta could do with what he already has set up at Arsenal. And what that leaves me with is a lot of the players. Ozil, Socrates, David Luiz, Mustafi, Xhaka, Kolasinac. Guys whose contracts are running out after this year, who most people want gone anyway. Once those guys are gone, that will free up so much for Arsenal and allow them to build fresh and build a new vision. But it's also not going to be possible without selling some other players in addition to that. I think that Arsenal right now may need to let go of like 10 to 15 players in the current squad and bring in maybe 7 to 8 to actually get where they want to be. They need to make some money so that they can spend some money, and they need to make some harsh decisions on who they want to keep and who they don't, especially with the young players. If you don't think Nketiah is the future, cut a check. 25 mil, let him go to some other club. You know, if you think it's Balogun, sign him up. New contract, big deal, seal it in, and give him some playing time. If you think Reece Nelson could be the one, let him play and show that. And if you don't, again, cut the check, 20 mil, send him off somewhere. Use that money to reinvest, and I really think that a lot could be changed with this Arsenal team. But the reality is that this year is pretty much already a write-off. I mean, do you really think that Arsenal is going to beat Benfica in the round of 32? If they beat them, do you really think that Arsenal is going to win that competition and get Champions League football? I don't, personally. Arteta and everybody else thought the top four or getting back in the Champions League was the main goal this season, and to an extent, I would say that Arsenal have already failed. So at this point, all we can really do is look forward. I don't think that a signing in January is going to massively change the club. I don't think that bringing in a new manager is going to massively change the club. Unfortunately, right now, we kind of just have to bear down and live through it for a little while and hope that when some of the old deadwood players leave the club, it brings in a bit of new life, and it has an opportunity for us to bring in some new, interesting players and build a squad that from the top down, everybody has a plan for. That's what I want to see more than anything, and I do think it's possible. It just needs to be planned out well and executed. But yeah, that's my long-winded thoughts on where Arsenal is right now. I hope that you got something from this video. I would love to hear what you think in the comments, but thanks everybody for watching. Be sure to drop a thumbs up if you made it this far. That's the least you could do. And I appreciate all the Arsenal fans around here. Again, let me know what you think in the comments, and I will catch y'all in the next video. Peace.